Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
This is RSS, the only feed you need. That's how we're going. That's how we're rolling.
Tagline.
Welcome to the show, Air Max 97. If I can call you Ollie.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Oliver.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank
Obviously been a massive fan of your work for quite some time. And I think I'm going to keep these on, actually, just to keep monitoring the mic levels, if you don't mind. Yeah, so obviously been a massive fan of you for some time, put releases out with you and worked with you quite a lot over the last few years. I think we've probably known each other for maybe six years?
Quite possibly. Yeah, a hot minute. 2014 maybe?
Yeah, exactly. I know, it's 4 years.
4 years,
Yeah, I
yeah.
can't count. My maths is bad.
Feels like ages though.
It does feel like a while, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think I first come across your music online, and yeah, I think I've always been intrigued and entertained by like the strangeness of your music,
right?
In the best possible way, like how experimental it is, and the kind of fearless approach to exploring new territories, and like the sort of the removal of boundaries, or kind of expected traditions for club music forms, basically.
Cool.
So yes, that's why I kind of wanted to sit down, have a chat with you. I think it'd be good for other people that we kind of know, and for people that follow yourself and your work, and kind of I feel like that there's not enough sort of formats or opportunities for people like ourselves, maybe, that kind of run and operate within kind of niche genres of club music, to kind of talk about stuff at a more in-depth level. And it's not just all about certain outlets and etc. So that's the kind of premise for the conversation. I think I'll stop talking in a minute, and I'll let you do the talking. But I think I would like to kind of look at it fairly linearly and go from kind of I suppose where you grew up, and the sort of the early years pre Air Max 97.
Right. Well, I was born in the Netherlands, and then my family moved to New Zealand when I was 2 years old. And I basically grew up there, went to school there, also went to university, art school there. My family moved a little bit in New Zealand, but where we ended up was Dunedin, which is like in the south of the South Island of New Zealand. So I guess that's...
And what sort of ages then are we talking, sort of from until now, with that sort of movement?
So I moved when my family moved to New Zealand when I was 2 years old. We moved a few times in New Zealand. Like for a while we were living in like very, very rural South Island, New Zealand, super isolated. And
what was that like?
It was interesting. It was pretty cool, actually, to be like, to be there sort of from ages 5 to 10,
mm-hmm.
because we could just sort of like walk off the back of our property and go explore, and it was just huge farms and
amazing
creeks and limestone cliffs and rivers and stuff. So very kind of expansive and wild. But then as soon as my brother and I got to high school age, culturally there's not so much to offer, and we were always kind of we always felt like outsiders there,
Mm-hmm.
like the communities there are like farmers, people that have been there for generations.
Right, okay.
We were kind of very obviously foreign. My parents with like very thick Dutch accents that they would never lose,
Sure.
And just also the sheer fact that we hadn't been there for generations as well. So I think it was timely for us to move to somewhere a bit more cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
Which ended up being Dunedin, New Zealand.
A little bit closer, a little bit further away. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I mean,
it's the end of the world. Like
right.
If you stand on the beach and look out, there's just ocean, and then eventually there's Antarctica.
Wow.
It's not really a place that a lot of people
gravitate towards? Or
yeah. I mean, it's actually kind of a cool place. Like, there's a strong university culture there, and Dunedin is actually kind of famous for like a moment of indie music and kind of noise music from the 80s and 90s that people really revere. So yeah, it kind of has this like small bohemian core that lives on quite strong.
Core contingent, yeah. That's kind of like running through it.
Yeah, and I going to art school there. I also had like my first sort of musical experiences there, living at this amazing warehouse where there were bedrooms, but also studios, and a like big scary basement where we would throw parties. And
as a teen, right?
Yeah, so like as a late teen, when I moved out of home and when I was studying at art school.
Amazing.
I lived there for a while, and kind of had a studio, and then was invited to join these like massive noise jams.
Amazing.
And that, they were really like, oh, come get involved. And I was like, I tried to teach myself guitar when I was a teenager, because I was always a massive fan of music, but I'd never learned any instruments or anything. I never had any formal training. I still haven't.
Same.
So I'd like tried to like teach myself guitar, and I was pretty trash at it. And then when I moved into this warehouse, people were like, okay, we're going to have our epic noise jams. You've got to join in. I was like, I don't know how to do music. Like, no. And they were like, you don't have to know. Like, just get involved.
Just go with it. Yeah.
And that was amazing. Like, very pivotal for me, because, there was kind of like, no rules, and a real focus on like listening first, and then finding a way that you can contribute, and then that being whatever.
Yeah, kind of that relationship with sort of expression and between expression and your ears sort of thing, rather than
totally. And that being completely unmediated by technical knowledge or classical music theory or technical ability, anything like this. So that's definitely very like fundamentally informative of my music.
Let's talk a bit more about art school. Like, what were your was it a specific course, and kind of what was your approach then, and how did you approach art?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I ended up graduating with a major in new media art. Yeah. But over the course of my studies, I kind of switched departments a few times. I think I went from like sculpture to new media art, and then actually like I was doing a bunch of painting in my final year. So my art practice was pretty kind of multifaceted. I then moved from New Zealand when I'd finished my degree to Melbourne. Sure. And so after art school, that's where I was kind of trying to like build my practice. My approach was kind of sort of somewhere in between conceptually driven and more formally driven. Right. Okay. So I think I've always been really interested in the intersection, or the sort of threshold between representation and abstraction. Right. And I would find different ways to explore that, sometimes with like found objects, but maybe reworked or manipulated in a certain way. Yeah. Or more with painting, like certain like systems of graphic representation and stuff, but sort of isolating them or exploding them a little bit to a point where you're not quite sure if to a level of obscurity almost. Exactly. Or just trying to find that sweet spot right in between. I mean, among other kind of like interests and pursuits as well. But I think that's one of the things that kind of like ended up dovetailing with my musical stuff. And then really just in a lot of ways, music ended up organically taking over again. Yeah. So after that first like burst of interest and inspiration with noise music, I was really visual art focused, especially in Melbourne, and I was away from that community in Dunedin where music was so important, and I really wasn't doing music stuff for several years, but then it kind of became this like fun thing that I would pursue on the side if I had a spare night
Yeah.
here and there.
And where did the spark for the? I mean, obviously you'd had the sort of the noise and introduction to, I suppose, musical creation then. But at that point, did you have software and whatnot, and like, you know, when you kind of got into producing, I assume club music or, you know, the next phase you're about to discuss, like what was the sort of jump off point for that, and were there any triggers and, you know, any references or influences, or, you know, what were you into at the time?
Yeah. So I had always had Ableton, and that's because at first when I was doing the kind of noise stuff in Dunedin, I was like doing vocals for a while. I had a circuit.
Bring it back.
I had a circuit bent radio for a while.
Amazing. Any
Any
of that available online anywhere?
No, like
even if it is, you're not going to tell us what it is.
Well, no, but this is the thing. Like, we would just like burn like 6 CDs or dub like 6 tapes, and then
Nice.
like have them for sale for like $2 at our shows.
Amazing.
You know? And yeah, I mean, it wasn't pre-internet, but the focus really was not about like broadcasting it to the world. It was
Yeah,
really
it was like a localized.
very much so, yeah, for our little community. And like, I don't know, I was in maybe like 4 different bands at the same time, but they were basically all the same lineups, and like, but it was amazing because like, yeah, there would be sometimes international or like acts from other parts of New Zealand that would come through, and we would throw a show in this basement that was definitely not legal and not like OHS okay, but in this warehouse where there were no residential neighbors, so we could just like
make as much noise as you want.
Crank
Yeah.
it, and like, yeah, there was definitely some amazing,
Like the dream scenario,
stuff
pretty
going
much.
on there. Yeah. But yeah, towards the end of my kind of work in that more experimental mode, I got really interested in field recordings. So I was making a lot of my own field recordings, and then yeah, the live performances that I was doing at the end of that period was like spontaneous like compositions of these field recordings and other sounds in Ableton.
Nice.
So yeah, long story short, my interest in noise music really kind of waned, and I moved away from Dunedin, and it was really not a focus anymore, but I still had Ableton. And then I feel like as a listener, I was a little bit lost for a while, because I think especially in that experimental music headspace, you kind of end up being really preoccupied with having a good taste in music, you know?
Yeah, that being the kind of the thing to uphold, or being overconscious of it, I think, maybe.
Exactly. And the kind of hegemonic understanding of that in that space is all pop music is bad.
Sure.
And then like
the rules, the unwritten rules, or maybe the vocalized rules, but yeah.
Right. And it took me a good like 2 or 3 years to kind of unlearn that and be like, no, wait, like my first love as a listener from being a kid was pop music.
Yeah,
like,
things on the radio. Or, yeah.
Totally. And I think also like, yeah, since the noughties, like pop music has been a space of incredible innovation, experimentation too, you know?
Sure.
And so I just sort of, I think slowly that started seeping back into my listening diet, and just got me really inspired. And then like really specifically being reintroduced to dance music was through Disc Magazine. So I was going to Disc Magazine as a like art student, interested in like post-internet art, and then found the mixes and was like, what's this?
That's a little connection into another world.
Yeah. And that just ended up being such an amazing rabbit hole, because prior to that, I mean, of course I'd listened to dance music, and I used to go to like crazy drum and bass raves out in the middle of nowhere, like
sounds great.
Like as a teen in New Zealand. But I kind of didn't really have an understanding of like dance music or its history or its culture. And I sort of like very slowly started exploring that and unraveling that through finding these
I suppose the curiosity kicks in once you find something that kind of strikes a nerve, right? And then you kind of...
Yeah, for sure. And the kind of artists and labels that we're talking about then, would be like Fade to Mind and Night Slugs, and these people that kind of emerged on SoundCloud and stuff that, had this very kind of expanded, quite exploratory mode, where things are being bind in a super kind of inspiring, interesting way. And so yeah, then I opened up Ableton again and started trying to make beats.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, what was the... So yeah, so it was, I suppose, yeah, the kind of... the accumulating, yeah, curiosity with this, like, yeah, newfound music was kind of was what triggered kind of, yeah, to get experimenting again.
Yeah.
So what, do you remember what that first session was like? The first Ableton
session.
Does that stick out, or was it more about the time that you remember?
Yeah, I remember. In general? I remember I didn't realize that you could change the grid pattern in Ableton from like 4/4 to triplets.
Right. Okay.
And so I was trying to I was really into triplets, trying to do triplets, but like without the triplet guide.
Yeah.
It took me a good 2 years to figure out that I could switch the grid.
Yeah, like learning the hard way almost.
Yeah, just like intensely, like by hand,
painfully,
pasting in beats.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've all been there, and like, yeah, I mean, I probably still don't know everything there is to know about Ableton. I did like a crash course, and yeah, I think, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of different, people out there that have had certain experiences similar to that, where they've kind of like not known about something until after a while. But
yeah, totally. I mean, but that's the beauty of that software too. You know, it's so open to people finding their own kind of methodologies in it. And that's one thing that I really love about like working with other people, collaborating in the studio or whatever. Inevitably, you find some little like shortcut or technique.
Yeah, you'll always learn something.
I've never
definitely.
known. Yeah, and I really love like you could give like 4 different producers the same kind of end goal. Everybody would find a different way to achieve it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like that in itself is an overriding theme with, I think, without going too deep just yet, but like sort of life in general, right? I think you're potentially prescribed and given a pathway, but everyone has their own way essentially.
Yeah.
So I mean, I suppose to flip back to, or to continue on the path talking about your kind of, was that first Ableton session then, was Air Max 97 already in the mind, and like how did that first Ableton session post noise mode evolve into Air Max 97? Yeah, and yeah, how did you get from that first session to Air Max 97, or the beginning of Air Max 97?
Yeah, well, I think I started trying to write beats in Ableton before I had a name or any aspiration to release the music and put it out. But my friend Romy was organizing parties in Melbourne, and she asked me to support Picture Plane at the end of 2013, I think.
Yeah.
She was like, right, you're DJing, because we worked together in this chocolate factory in Melbourne.
Sick.
And then, a cool company, still like friends of mine work there. It's like an organic, sustainable, like chocolate and health food company.
Nice.
It's like a bit of a rite of passage for like creative types in Melbourne. But she was like, right, you're on the bill, you've got to pick a name. And I was like, Air Max 97. And then, yeah, it kind of stuck. And actually, like starting to DJ was also a big kind of catalyst for producing as well. I was really inspired by people on SoundCloud that were making bootlegs and edits, and I was like, I want to give that a go.
Yeah.
So I searched out some acapellas, and my first productions were mostly edits, actually.
Sure.
And those were the first things I shared as well.
So yeah, so when did you start DJing then? Or when did you learn to DJ?
That show was like 2013, but it was like on tractor, no controller.
Sure.
Just like
straight
wrecking
in.
It. Yeah. I think I played
learning straight in the.
I think I played a tear out dubstep remix of Rammstein.
Nice.
Yeah. But then
poignant gig.
Yeah. Landmark. But yeah, there's a kind of like learning curve from there. I think I graduated to a controller, like a K2 controller, maybe for the next year, and I probably played only like 3 or 4 times or something.
Yeah.
And then eventually like learned CDJs and like met a couple of other people who were interested in the same sort of music, and we started running a club night and blah blah blah. Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, so I suppose so Air Max was born from the request for a name for your first DJ gig, pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah.
Had you produced any Air Max 97 music by that point?
No. No, I think
so
after
it was
that,
like like a DJ moniker first and foremost.
Yeah.
And does that relate to a love of the shoe in particular, or like do you have a particular love of trainers or sneakers?
Like, not really.
Okay.
Like, I'm not one of these people that has like 20
like
pristine pairs in my closet back home.
Sure.
No.
Just had to ask. You know.
Yeah, but I mean, I was also like strangely obsessed with sneakers when I was a kid, and I was like always drawing pictures, trying to design my own Nikes when I was like 9 years old.
Amazing. So it's
living in New Zealand, really obsessed with basketball, even though I didn't play basketball, had never been to an NBA game, but like my brother and I would collect
like the cards?
Yeah, like playing cards.
Amazing. Yeah, I've actually still got a shitload of those.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I used to collect loads as a kid. Yeah, there's a company called Fleer, and
that's right.
Yeah.
Fleer Ultra.
Yeah, and they do it season by season. And
Upper Deck.
Yeah, Upper Deck was another one.
Top.
Yeah, Top.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've still got a bunch. I'll show you later.
Do you have any like holographic, like
I do, yeah.
signed ones?
Not signed, but I got some holographic cards. Anyway, we digress.
We do. No, but there was kind of like a, yeah. I think looking back on 8-year-old me that was like so obsessed with Nike, I'm kind of slightly bemused in a way, like yeah. But so of course there is an awareness of like taking this trope, this brand name from Nike, and kind of reappropriating it for my own use, but it's not really from this like
it's not
pure love of the sneaker
yeah.
and this like idolatry of it.
I think that makes it a bit cooler, to be honest. That is kind of a bit more of an abstract adoption.
Yeah, maybe. But
of the, even though you love the brand, but
well, yeah, and like, but it has been interesting since then actually, because I have learned since doing club music that seems to kind of have some relevance here in the UK, what that shoe has meant culturally for people here.
Yeah, it's a pretty big shoe in Europe.
For sure,
yeah massive shoe.
And a strong association to, music and kind of
urban
culture.
Yeah, exactly, and club music. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So that's been quite fascinating and humbling to kind of learn from people, you know?
Yeah.
And it's always been really fun, like people coming to my shows in the club and just being like, check out the 97.
Amazing. Wore them just for you.
No, literally.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's funny. I mean, that's cool. That's pretty cute, actually.
Yeah,
it's a nice little perk to the job.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I suppose thinking about like the inception of Air Max 97, and you said like the first productions were edits. Like, how did your sound and exploration of sound and production kind of evolve from the kind of the edits into, the early stages of what we hear and sort of see now?
That's a good question. I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, for me, it's always been very exploratory. And I think I've always been very mindful of the fact that, kind of in a way, in terms of dance music, I'm an outsider, like, and this is something more broader thematically. I maybe feel more generally in my life too. Like I don't really have a very strong idea of home. I was an immigrant in New Zealand. I moved away from New Zealand when I was an adult. There's a lot of things that I really love about Australia. In lots of ways, that is a home of mine. And there's people that I really love and things that I really enjoy about Australia, but yeah, there's also kind of limitations, and I also don't fully feel at home there. So I think I've always really been very mindful of not really being able to kind of like step into a defined genre and call it my own. And I mean, I also think that I'm terrible at doing that. Like I would be really hopeless at like trying to figure out exactly how X producer created this particular sound, and that's just
that's not the approach at all. Yeah, so I was going to say,
I know that some people do that though, and I know that really works for some people, but I'm just like terrible.
Yeah, that's not your approach. Yeah, I suppose a kind of follow-on question from that really was sort of, I suppose to sort of discuss if you've got a particular process or something that works for you when producing. Yeah,
well, it was really just kind of like, I guess, responding to my influences in the music that I was really inspired by, but trying to make sure that that influence was kind of, more about like energy and vibe than it was about like copying kick patterns or something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then, just like trying to make things that would work in my DJ sets. Like definitely producing has always kind of gone hand in hand with DJing. And just having some kind of effect on the dance floor, like whether that's like, something up-tempo that keeps people moving, or something that does that for a while but then also like throws a spanner into the works and kind of resets the energy or disrupts things a bit. And I guess taking that format of like club functionality in a relatively like broad sense, and then trying to push into the edges of that in different ways, and approach it from different directions and see how far I can pull it and bend it and stretch it. Yeah, before I get into trouble.
Well, I mean, and that was something. I think, especially when it comes to, I suppose, innovative or experimental club music or whatever it is, it's you kind of sometimes I think you listen to stuff and it's you can see through or see quite obviously where certain people's references have come from, and like it might be like certain kick patterns and that. But I think that's what stood out to me when I first listened to your music, was that it was definitely being tested and stretched and explored in a really, really good way.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
So I think and especially your album as well. I think you kind of really kind of pushed everything out as far as you could, and I thought it was amazing.
Thanks.
So I think the how many releases have you put out now under Air Max?
Let's see.
Because I was going to say you worked with NLV as well.
That's right. Yeah,
exactly.
A couple of singles with NLV.
Yeah.
Including those, it's probably around 10, I'd say. Maybe like
so a good
6 EPs and then a couple singles and then the album, something like that.
Nice. So a good full kind of body of work.
Yeah, actually.
Spanning a couple of years, obviously different flavors and tastes. Where do you see your production going from here on out?
That's a great question. I kind of feel like I'm at quite a particular moment, because having just released my album earlier in the year, in a lot of ways that feels like the kind of most definitive musical statement I've made. And I think if I were to do another album, I would want it to be quite different. But I don't really know what that would look like or sound like yet.
Mm-hmm. Plus album projects are like pretty intense, right?
Definitely. Yeah, that was a lot of work.
I mean, when I approached it, it was a lot more work than I imagined, I think. And like coming out the other side of it had highs and lows.
Sure, yeah, totally.
The whole I
mean, there's always like post-release depression.
It's
gnarly with an album.
Yeah, when something I suppose anything, right? Any sort of big project that consumes your headspace, your time, your energy, your money, and then you don't have that all of a sudden. After it might be that you're working on a project for like 12 months, which is a long time to be like fully immersed in something.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
To not be that immersed in something anymore feels isolating and lonely in a way.
Yeah, it can do, for sure.
And a sense of emptiness. And that's talking from my own experience, but also from speaking to other artists as well that kind of have that sort of same thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but then conversely also it's like, cool, I feel like that's a good thing to have out, and I'm not in a rush to put out the next thing.
Exactly.
I'm always writing new music, like new kind of MX97 tracks or whatever, but yeah, so inevitably I'm sure a new release is kind of already percolating, but I'm not kind of like focusing on that too hard right now. Yeah.
Cool.
But
so yeah, there's more stuff in the works, and we'll hear all in good time.
Yeah, for sure. But another thing that I've also been working on musically is producing more instrumentals and kind of beats focused towards vocalists.
Yeah.
And I anticipate that that'll kind of end up going out under a different moniker, or kind of ideally for me actually just like coming out under these vocalists' names.
As like a credited producer rather than like
yeah, I think what's the task there for me, or the goal is really to like make productions that work the best for the artists, you know? I want it to be like driven by and tailored to
rather than like your
artists.
Specific,
rather than my vision, my ego.
Exactly. Like it's a different kind of way of working, I suppose.
In a lot of ways kind of like the opposite of MX97, which is pretty kind of like indulgent and solipsistic in a lot of ways, you know? Like I'm setting the brief and I'm
you're fully in control, you're pushing it out, like
so that's kind of nice actually, and it's a good counterpoint to the album project. Like writing these beats has kind of felt like a cool outlet where I'm not kind of in a way it's a little more free and easy than doing the MX97 stuff, where I try and really like not write the same track twice and have some new ideas.
Like the sort of the pressure to to evolve, and the words escape my mind, but
I think I'm much harder on myself. Doing MX97 tracks than I am doing these beats. Then sort of receiving feedback from a vocalist, or kind of figuring out, how do I then sort of adapt this to like best support that artist or whatever. It's a very different process, and one that I quite enjoy. Yeah.
So, in amongst this time and body of work over the last few years, obviously you started your own record label, Decision Records.
That's right.
Go like and follow and subscribe, whoever's listening or watching.
Decisions.
So talk a bit more about that. The kind of premise for setting things up, and what you wanted to kind of do with the label, how you wanted to run it,
So I began the label in 2015, and the catalyst was really that I had been sending around my new music at that time and struggling to find someone to release it. And then spoke with some people like yourself that ran their own labels, and kind of got motivated and inspired to take it on myself, because I think the opportunity to, instead of like continue releasing on small labels and, broadening my audience through that, and also like contributing to people's projects, it was quite attractive to start doing that for myself.
Sure.
And kind of build something cohesive of my own. And then also in Australia, which is where I was still living at the time, there was quite a vacuum infrastructurally for the kind of music that I was doing, and also some of my friends there were doing. And by that I mean kind of like experimental and more moody dance music or electronic music. So that was another motivation too. And basically it's been the vehicle for all of my own releases since 2015. And interspersed between my releases, there's been releases from other artists that I really admire, many of whom are from Australia.
Amazing. I think that's something that's great about the way you've operated with the label, and about kind of bigging up probably where you're most connected to musically, if that's
Yeah,
right.
in a way. Well, it's interesting because I think for me, I've always had like one foot in Australia and then one foot in the internet, or one foot in the Northern Hemisphere.
One foot on the line.
Yeah. And so, I mean, especially in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I've spent as much time outside of Australia as I have in Australia.
Yeah.
So more and more, I don't feel kind of properly immersed or connected in the scene there. But I feel like I can be a conduit in a way, you know?
Sure.
And like, yeah, offer Australian artists a bit more of an international platform and, yeah, try and make some connections between diverse audiences. Yeah.
So talk to us about the other artists you put out on Decisions then, and yeah, any kind of ways in which you discovered them, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my phone out and go through our back catalogue so I don't
big up
out.
the roster, mate. Big up the roster.
That's right.
The stable, the family.
Exactly. Yeah, it really is. It really is the family. So Waterhouse was the first release by someone else, and it's my friend Jade, who is based in Melbourne. She has since become more visual art focused.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's one of my favorite DJs. Incredibly fearless. Like, we'll go from like banging techno to like an ASMR recording to like amazing ambience and like really like interesting stuff on the mixer with effects and EQ and stuff. Like every DJ set is like such a trip.
Yeah.
And yeah, I released her record, which was mostly these kind of like electronic ambient bedroom pop jams in a way, which was kind of fun. It was like because my one of my releases was the very first one, and that was quite kind of stripped back drum tracks, and then Waterhouses was the second, and I feel like in doing that I kind of set the spectrum, the two poles of the spectrum that Decisions would cover, you know. Sure.
Here exactly. We'll operate in between these two,
exactly,
polarizing.
Yeah. So yeah, I still have a lot of love for that record. And then Jikaru as well, who is Sydney based, and just like the
amazing tracks.
Yeah, so sick. Like super rich melodically, really like sparkly and bright and icy, and then really tough rhythms. Yeah,
good combinations.
Yeah, like so juicy
all around.
And then also just like super original. Like there's some kind of like grimy energy there, but it's also just like so distinctively Jikaru as well. So we've released 2 of her records, and she's also a really amazing DJ as well, and has been recently also doing vocal production work for a couple of our friends in Australia, and since this year has joined me alongside our friend Scam, who I'll talk about shortly, in co-organizing the label too.
Cool.
Which is really awesome for me because, like, yeah, as I said, I feel more and more like I don't have such a presence in Australia, but these guys can kind of like, hold down the fort back there,
sure.
And
kind
then
of step up a bit and get more involved.
Yeah, and then they could also sort of relieve me of the like many duties that the label project involves, because at times I've really felt like I've hit the limit of what I was kind of capable of, alongside
everything else,
my own practice and
and
the other hustles.
Paying the bills.
Exactly.
Exactly. We'll get onto that in a bit.
Right. And then the next release by someone else was Auburn, who was my friend Ian from Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And we first got in touch because he made a bootleg of one of my tracks, and it was kind of one of the strangest, most amazing things I'd heard in ages. And we struck up a conversation, and that eventually led to him making a release. And I really love Ian. He's super prolific, has released quite a lot of his own music, like obviously on Decisions, but with other labels as well. Yeah. And then just does the most amazing bootlegs and edits as well. Amazing. Kind of like every 6 months I'll get another like 10 like insane,
just like keeping the crates
from him,
nice and happy for the DJ set.
Yeah. And he's just incredibly prolific and is doing really great things in Frankfurt too, which is kind of, in some ways.
I was going to say, is there much of a kind of scene out there? Or
well, there's a very strong house and techno scene in Frankfurt, as there is everywhere.
Yeah, of course. Standard.
But yeah, in a lot of ways, it's kind of, I think everybody that's involved in this kind of like more experimental electronic music immediately gravitates towards Berlin.
Sure.
But I think Ian has made a concerted effort to stay in Frankfurt and kind of hold things down there.
Yeah.
So he's been doing these parties under the name Nancy and, trying to kind of like build a good network and a good energy among people not in Berlin, in Germany, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
which I think is really cool. Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And then the next other artist was DJ Plead.
Yeah.
Who was formerly Sydney based but is now Melbourne based, and was 1/3 of quite a cult band there called BV.
Okay, I don't know.
And also 1/2 of a duo called Poison. But has been bubbling as DJ Plead for a while, and kind of people who knew that his edits were totally fire, and were kind of like, gracing their DJ sets for a couple of years, and then we reached out to DJ Plead to get some originals down.
Amazing.
And this record has been a real runaway. Like, I've been really like humbled and impressed by, the different people that have come out of the woodwork in support of this release.
Amazing. Any notable mentions?
Well, for instance, like seeing like someone like Martin buying it on Bandcamp,
Amazing.
And just being like, okay,
that's cool.
This is going to get played at Panorama Bar. I'm into that.
Yeah, that's funny because like unless like a friend of a friend of a friend tells you about those kind of connections, sometimes like you don't really ever know, unless it is like Bandcamp and you can see who buys and you run your own kind of online store. It's like you don't often necessarily know who your audience is or how far or who it's reaching exactly.
Yeah, for sure. No, but also with this release, I've had, like a friend being like, oh, I saw DJ Plead ending up in a Pariah mix, or like I moved to London 3 months ago now, and I've been bumping into a bunch of people who are just like, love that DJ Plead release.
Amazing.
Didn't know your record label before that. Like,
good. So it's been a good entry point, and for other people to kind of get to know what you're doing.
For sure. And that record I think is really special because Jared is half Lebanese, and he's kind of taken that influence with these like Lebanese wedding drums and then kind of applying them in a more like club ready form. And very like percussion focused, and then really nice synth work, and they're just like club heaters. And he actually came through Europe a couple of months ago and played a string of dates, and I think had quite a lot of fun, which was
nice,
which was special. And then after that we released Chunyin, who is another like amazing Australian musician. She's Sydney based and is the most prolific person I know. I don't know how she does it. She like has a pop project under the name Rainbow Chan that is super successful. Chunyin, which is a kind of like low key like club focused stuff, more like rough and ready project. DANNN, which is a duo that she has with another musician that is kind of like live hardware in the club sort of stuff. She lectures at the University like Music Conservatorium in Sydney. Has a visual art practice as well that includes like performance art and installation. Travels all the time. Like, I don't know how she does it.
That's some level of productivity right there.
Like I don't know if she's got a clone or she like doesn't have to sleep or but
doesn't have to sleep.
Like so. Long story short, I was just like super honored that she would want to work with us, and we got a really nice release from Chunyin earlier this year with also some really nice like conceptual thinking behind it as well. Which I won't go into, but if people want to explore that, we covered that stuff in the press release, and she discussed it in a couple of like interviews, and there was also a couple of good reviews that picked up on a bunch of that stuff and expanded it as well.
Nice. Yeah, go check that out.
Yeah. And then earlier this year, we also released Oroboro, who's an Italian producer.
Yeah.
He's from the town of Cesena, but I think he's moved to Milano now, just recently. And yeah, he started sending me demos a year or two ago, and I was just like really interested and kind of perplexed by them. He's got a very singular sound, and he's really interested. I think he's really influenced by like bass music and drum and bass and stuff, which is kind of like, I think that struck a nerve from like, you know, way back when I was like 17 on acid at the drum and bass rave.
Amazing.
And yeah, like his production is like very idiosyncratic, very kind of like twisting, super detailed. But yeah, it's something quite special, I think. So we released a 3-tracker by him a couple of months ago. And then forthcoming in a couple of weeks is an EP by Scam.
Yeah.
It's my friend from Sydney, who was also now co-organizing Decisions. And his is a 4-track EP, 2 tracks of which are featuring Ciams, who's a vocalist from Sydney.
Yeah.
And this EP is a set of 4 love songs for bacteria and molecules.
Yeah, when I read the press release for this one, I was like, yeah, I mean, record press releases or whatnot are always like, I know I've seen a lot of them, and yeah, you're always challenged to try and keep them interesting. But yeah, when I read this one, when you sent it out the other week, I was like, yeah, kind of like, it's one of those ones makes you stop and think, right?
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
in a good way.
Yeah, no,
because often, you know, like you might like look and read, like just scan read things, or you know, press releases, or you know, but you know, I think when you get something that's attention grabbing like that, it was yeah, it was good, really good.
Cool. Well, yeah, all credit to Scam, because that was really him going in on those topics. And yeah, there's depths that we didn't even cover in the press release, because I feel like the press release is a fine art in a way. Like you don't want to...
Yeah, you don't want to over-labor the point.
No, you really don't.
You need to get the message across.
And you can't make it too long. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like nobody wants to read like a 2-page essay
like
in a press
few
release.
thousand words.
Yeah, and you don't want to make it too kind of like heavy and academic and stuff. Anyway, but I think there's going to be an interview on Acclaim with... Scam and Ciams in the coming weeks, and I'm sure they'll kind of go into more depth on the concepts behind there. But yeah, it's really beautiful, and Scam is a good friend, Tobias, and I was actually staying with him for a while earlier in the year while he was kind of writing this EP. So I got all of those concepts in great detail, and it's very sweet.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I think I played one of the tracks out the other week on the radio show. Yeah, I think it's a great release.
Cool.
Yeah, so...
No, it's very exciting, because also Scam has been like bubbling for a while, and he's also kind of been involved in these kinds of musics for a long time, but in a more kind of like background, like behind the scenes role.
Yeah.
And yeah, some of us have been lucky enough over the last like 2-3 years to get his like edits and originals in our inboxes, you know, for DJ sets. But I felt like it was really important and timely for him to like have a real release out.
Yeah, like kind of step into the light.
Yeah, for real, because yeah, the world needs to hear it.
Exactly.
In my humble opinion.
Note to self: I should not record a podcast with the washing machine on in the background, because I think the guys are going to hear it slightly. I just did a check in the headphones, but
domestic bliss.
Domestic bliss.
You could maybe go in and isolate the frequency, try and pull it out.
There you go. I'll get someone to do it in post.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, regarding the label, then, you know, what other releases have you got planned after Scam, or is that the last one for this year? How's the schedule looking for next year? Do you run it like that, and you know, how do you approach it? Is it kind of as and when, or do you put pressure on to have a certain number of releases out? I think that's important to kind of also cover.
That's a good question. I think it's important to look ahead, you know, but that's kind of easier said than done, because, you know, it's a lot of work and I need to make sure that there's enough time in my schedule to get all of that done. Now that I'm working with Jess and Tobias, there's a bit more kind of like liaising going on as well. And then, yeah, working with artists. Some artists need a lot of time. Some artists are quick to deliver stuff. Some people, there's a bit more kind of like back and forth in terms of like track listing and maybe doing mix downs. I'm sometimes involved with doing mix downs.
Sure.
Or yeah, you know, so it does,
yeah, it varies from project
to project. It varies a lot.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like how many releases per year, I think it's average to be about 3 or 4 per year, and we kind of go through stages where they kind of cluster together, and then there's a few more gaps, and I think that's a good thing to aspire to in the future as well. We might be able to pick it up a bit more now that Jess and Tobias are involved as well.
Sure.
But ultimately this label is a labor of love, you know, and it's kind of like break even at best. So
yeah,
I don't think it could really be much more kind of ambitious than that. In terms of what we've got coming up, one of our projects that we've been developing over this year that Jess and Tobias have really spearheaded is remixes for the first time. So basically all of the artists on the roster, the past ones, but also a few forthcoming artists have contributed releases where they've, remixes of stuff from the back catalogue.
From the back catalogue, yeah, I got it.
And that's a kind of fun thing for us because we've never done remixes on the EPs.
Sure.
And that was kind of a conscious choice on my part because I think it's really important for people, especially if they're debuting, to be able to make their own musical statement.
Agreed,
Not to be affected by a remix, for better or for worse. But yeah, having said that, remix is obviously really fun, and this will end up basically being like a compilation that may or may not coincide with our 3rd birthday, which is basically like the end of this year.
Nice.
But yeah, that's kind of in progress, and it'll either arrive towards the end of this year or early next year, I think.
Nice. Yeah, it's always the remix format. Like, it's something that we haven't really done either on the label, and I think it's something we'll start to do going forward. It also helps, like, for people that are only just, like, might be discovering your label now or in the future. It's a link back to your catalogue naturally. And yeah, so I think it's always interesting to get someone else's take on someone else's music.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially when, like, you know, a lot of people start out, like, editing other people's tracks, you know, in the early stages of production.
That's very true.
And it's often a starting point for other people, so I think that's often a kind of, I don't know, an instinct for producers to do that, and it's always a fun project, I think, playing around with someone else's music, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, a few of them have started rolling in, and it's been really nice to hear people's reinterpretations. Yeah, so it's good. It's like, it's a bit more fun, like you know, being like, each artist has to have their own musical vision, and no remixes is quite like serious, you know?
It's quite, the remix element's fun, and
I think it'll be a kind of like fun celebration in a way that looks to the past but also to the future.
Sure.
And then we've got a few other releases like gradually percolating, but it's probably a bit too early to state those, just because we're not 100% sure yet of the timings, but actually, there's one that I can speak about. It's a New York artist called Tendril.
Okay.
Spelt with a Y. Tendril with a Y. And he was another one that just like emailed me out of the blue, actually, and I was just like totally hooked on the sonics, and we've gone back and forth over the last year or two, and slowly developed a track list, and I'm about to give it like a little mix, and then we'll roll that one out.
Nice.
Yeah, and again, I'm not 100% sure about the timing because you want to avoid December, January, but
Yeah, it's always a sticky time, isn't it?
it is.
I'm gonna. Well, actually, yeah. It is always a sticky time. I mean, yeah, press just don't want to know from like middle of November onwards, basically, because everyone's busy writing their end of year lists, which I think is comical.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of like either get it out, try and get it out before the end of November, or timing's always tricky, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it can be. Yeah. So yeah.
Cool. So there's a lot of good projects coming up by the sounds of things, and everything feels like it's grown organically in a really nice way, and like the intention with what, kind of setting up things for some of the Aussie based artists as well is really good. And then so with your like most recent movement, because obviously you're London based now.
Correct.
How long have you been back here or been here? And kind of want to talk more about possibly the less sexy side of sort of sustaining a kind of a kind of an artist and DJ life with kind of finding the balance between the art and the commerce, or being able to kind of self-sustain a living essentially. Because I know obviously you've done kind of graphics work and other visual work before, so I don't know, maybe talk a bit about that first, in terms of other artistic disciplines that help you create revenue.
Sure. Yeah.
And how that all kind of interplays and how it's worked for you, or maybe not. Yeah. In some cases.
For sure. Well, graphic design and textile design actually has been kind of a breadwinner for me in the past. So,
and is that all self-taught? Or is that kind of stem out of the kind of art school, and is it something that you kind of built up over the years?
Yeah, I guess so. Like I've never received formal training in graphic design or textile design, but of course, like it kind of came from the broader kind of like creative project.
Yeah,
was very much informed by going to art school. So for the last day job that I had was a textile design job. But not a particularly glamorous one. Around that same time, I had a far more fun textile design gig that was for my friend's label called Ask, which was run by two friends of mine, Sarah and Aggie, who are from Australia but were based in Paris at the time. That's where they were running the label. And that was super fun because it was a small team, and each season we would kind of like sketch out a concept, and they would share that with me, and then I'd be like, all right, well, let's explore that through this and this, and then between us we'd sort of develop the graphics and the collection. That was really fun.
Sounds like a fun project.
Super fun. So but as of 3 or 4 years ago they ended that, and they both kind of moved on to new projects and new directions, and then since quitting, basically for the last 3 years I've been freelance.
Sure.
And that's a combination of my music practice, and then also graphic design, kind of loosely speaking, and the design stuff being for a few clients that are usually like often friends, or friends of friends kind of thing, like helping people out with different bits and pieces, and then like going on tour and then kind of being up for a little while, and then being really broke for a while, and then praying to the sync license gods. For a check to come in, and then the sync gods coming through every now and again, and
God bless those sync gods.
Yeah, for real. So it's a bit of a roller coaster, but I think I was really locked down with that day job a few years ago, and it was really good. I was very comfortable, and had means, but I was kind of miserable. And this freelance life and the ability to travel more and kind of like explore the world, through playing shows, was really like beckoning, and I decided just to sort of like do that leap of faith.
Yeah, literally jump off the edge.
Yeah, pretty much. And but I'm lucky because I feel like I'm pretty good at subsisting. You know, I don't need to have lots of money and lots of nice things. So, yeah, because I made such a conscious decision to step away from that, I'm like, happy to put up with it being a bit more of a like roller coaster now, because I have the freedom to move, and I'm mostly doing the stuff that I'm really passionate about, and not having a boss and having to turn up somewhere at 9 a.m. that I really didn't want to go to, like that means a lot to me. I really value that, even though sometimes it's kind of tough, you know. And also like being able to travel with my music is like the most like humbling, amazing thing that I would have never thought was possible. Do you know what I mean? So I just like absolutely cherish that, the fact that people are willing to like fly me over or like have me play in like China or Mexico or Moscow or whatever. Like I'm just like I can't, you know, I'm pinching myself like
hands down. It's just like those experiences, they're amazing, I think.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, for me that's like really worth it. I mean, I don't know if I can sustain this forever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially if there's a time in my life where I might need to be more secure and stable and stuff. But yeah, for now, I'm kind of down with like keeping the juggling act going.
Yeah, and like we were talking before, I think it's something that probably isn't discussed enough, or I don't know, feel like there aren't enough resources to try and understand how you can sustain, you know, that balance. For
sure. Yeah, it feels like a bit of an elephant in the room sometimes. Yeah,
when it's like, you know, the projected image of, you know, artists online, you tend to, from the outside, tend to make assumptions over, you know, how their personal life may be, or their, you know, financial situation might be, or how they sustain themselves in that way. But yeah, I often find out that it's not as you assumed, and then I think even more when you put yourself in that situation or start to, then, you know, it's a whole other ball game.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to kind of think about what your expectations are in a way, and whether you're kind of like down to like have a more sort of like precarious existence. But I think it also is really dependent on the kind of music that you do, and like what kind of lifestyle you want to have. There's so many variables at play, really. Yeah. But you know, like I'm pretty aware that my music is really kind of like a niche of a niche, not super marketable. I'm also like not really interested in like posting a million things on social media and like, being this charismatic,
the volume game, like
public figure. Which I don't know, may or may not be a detriment to the kind of like commercial viability of my career. I also have never paid for promotion. Like that's another thing that I kind of didn't even realize kind of existed.
But same. When you get into it, it was like kind of understanding how certain things work is. Yeah,
but you said earlier that it seems like things have kind of grown organically with the label or my career or whatever, and that's kind of pretty true. Like I've never like had I've never paid for any like PR or anything like this. Like if I speak about touring, it's really because somebody from one place has introduced me to somebody else, and all these connections have been quite sort of like personal, or I would like to think quite genuine, and that is really meaningful to me. But you know, it's like a niche of a niche. So I also, like can't expect to get like crazy fat fees for a whole string of like festival gigs or something like that.
Like, and it's also your expectations and the reality are aligned. As opposed to you being sat here thinking or getting pissed off that you didn't have a string of festival dates.
Sure.
But like because I think that's another thing is like sort of expectations and reality, when they're misaligned, that's when you can either send yourself in a spin if you're in that situation, or I think you need to be in tune with like what
For sure.
what your what your reach is, or I don't know. Just being a bit realistic, I think.
For sure. And like it's still important to me to play the shows where people are like, look, we're really enthused, our venue is small, we haven't been running our party for very long, but we'd really love to have you. Like, I'm willing to do that show then for a smaller fee.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I would rather say yes and kind of have a fun experience and have people kind of appreciate the fact that I came out than to sort of just say no because it's not enough money. You
exactly,
know?
yeah.
And then whatever, I might play something that's a bit bigger, or put on by a bigger institution that I can kind of make up for that fee-wise.
Exactly. And I think a lot of the time, some of those smaller shows and promoters, you tend to make, I don't know, stronger and closer relationships with people there, or have sometimes more meaningful experiences with some of the people you meet that enjoy your work.
100%. I would rather play a show to like 50 or 100 people that are 100% vibing, 100% there, like having a great time, than playing a show that's maybe paid more but to a room of, I don't know, 400 people that don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, like, I was in that position too for a year or so in Melbourne, putting on club nights. Like, being a promoter is like a kind of often quite a like unsung, like difficult task, but an important one, for the culture of a city, especially if they're somewhere a bit off the map and what they're presenting is not straightforward house techno, or I don't know, not an easy
room to fill sort of thing. Exactly. So any tips or advice for anyone that's looking to either, step into a more freelance lifestyle or support their music with other means? Anything that jumps out or spring to mind that?
That's a good question. I think that if you are going from a situation where you're like in a day job and considering taking the leap, I suggest saving up as much money as you can before you do it.
Yeah.
And also like get out of your mindset that you might have on that income.
Sure.
Just imagine that you have to live off like half that and sort of spend accordingly.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know. I think just make sure that you're like kind of like motivated enough as well, or that you can continue to produce when you don't have a day job providing structure in your life as well. Like that can actually be a challenge too.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden
having too much time to produce almost.
Exactly. Like all of a sudden having all this free time, and then you're like, okay, instead of like going to the office at 9 a.m, you're like sitting down in the studio at 9 a.m. being like, okay, I got to write bangers. Like that might actually not work, or like, I don't know, some people might find themselves just being completely distracted then and waking up 6 months later and like not having done anything. I'm trying to think what else. I think just like be realistic about what you're spending money on too. Like if you're going to do a record label, think very carefully about pressing vinyl.
Yeah, I mean vinyl's that's a whole other series of podcasts for talking about vinyl production, distribution, getting set up and everything. It's a bit of a minefield, I think. And I mean, share any thoughts or comments you've got on that.
Heinously expensive, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's really expensive.
But I don't know. I think one of the things that's worth maybe thinking about is like is the demand there in a way for like is there the demand if you were to go freelance or like 100% try and sustain yourself off your music? Is that going to be viable long term?
Try and understand the demand before you like make the decision, basically.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Make sure you're
like, are you just
thorough.
aspiring to that?
Yeah, because
or
it
is
could
there
just be a
good indication that you can like move into that? And that's not an easy thing to judge necessarily, because you might be very
fantasy
limited.
and reality, like
sure, or there might be a limit to like how much you can build the music side while you're still at a day job. You know, like that's very real. Like, didn't the KLF say in their like handbook of like how to have a #1 hit, quit your job? Like, you have to be able to do this like full time, like to really like make something happen. Yeah. So there's that's worth bearing in mind. Like, you kind of in a way do have to like make the time to be able to like grow it more, but you also want to have an indication that
that there's some positive signs there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, you know, it's kind of tricky, and for me, it kind of meant that I had to leave Australia, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there was a limit to how many shows I could play in Australia.
Hence the move to Europe.
Yeah, for sure. So over the last like 3 years, I've basically been dividing my time 50-50, like chasing summer, more or less, between Europe, and that was usually Berlin, and Australia.
Talk to us about Berlin for a minute.
Okay, what do you want to know?
Well, I've been there, but like, how was your experience? What was it like? Obviously loads of people move there. Lots of people have been moving there for a long time now because of the lifestyle, the lower cost of living than, say, London in particular for a lot of people in the creative industries. It seems to be a place within Europe that people gravitate towards to help aid a creative lifestyle. Yeah.
Well, the reason that Berlin was a kind of default choice for me in Europe was in part informed by the fact that I lived there for a year for the first time in like 2009, I think. And so I still have friends there from that period, and the city was kind of familiar to me from spending time there all that time ago. And then it's cheaper, it's like very relaxed there, and that almost being like culturally speaking, but also just in terms of like the like urban layout of the city too. You know, the streets are kind of wider, there's like more of these like
it's less densely populated.
There's like these big unkempt parks, there's no real like CBD. The economy there has always kind of like been struggling like for the last like several decades, and then obviously like so many creative folks there. Having said all that, it's changing a lot, and I haven't noticed that since the 10 years I've been going back and forth. So it's getting harder and harder to find those really cheap rents and stuff, and more
prices
and more
are going up.
Prices are going up.
People are starting to cotton on a little bit, I suppose.
And more there's like obviously the big creative community, but there's more of this like tech startup vibe, and it's definitely changing, and not necessarily for the worse, but the atmosphere is kind of shifting there. But then there's the reality is that there's just like lots of clubs, there's a strong culture around dance music, there's a strong culture around partying.
I was gonna ask if you've got any Berghain stories that you want to discuss.
I don't know if they should be discussed publicly.
Probably not then.
No, which is kind of the beauty of Berghain too,
of course.
right? Like in a way, like what happens there stays in there, and that is what kind of makes it so special.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, Berghain is a funny one because it's this sort of lightning rod for so much like speculation and kind of fetishization, and I also don't think it's like a wholly perfect entity necessarily. Like, I know people that have certain frustrations about their door policy, like blah blah blah. Maybe I'm probably not well informed enough to really like go in on that kind of stuff, but just to acknowledge that it does have its criticisms as well. But there's like no other club on earth like it, you know? Like,
it's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible.
And the fact that you can just go there and party and keep partying and go between these two, like,
and you can
banging floors and like
and then
the
garden in the summer was one of my favorite spots.
Right.
So they open up the garden on the Sunday morning. So Sunday afternoon into Sunday night. When they've got like a little DJ set up in the like shipping containers.
Right.
That's always been a favorite in the summer. It's just quite a nice thing to do. Yeah. You can kind of, and the whole like, you know, you can kind of come and go as you please. If you need to go out to, I don't know, freshen up, or I don't know, you want to go and drink something else, or I don't know, whatever it is. But
for sure. And I think the fact that also it's a safe space for so many let's say behaviors and expressions that don't really have space in very many other places. It's hard to talk about this kind of abstractly, but you know, the stuff that happens there, I think it's amazing that there's a space for that. And it kind of blows my mind that like more people don't. I mean, I think some people have unsafe experiences there too, but it's kind of wild to me that there's just like so many people there partying every weekend,
the scale
taking
of
drugs and fucking, and like it's amazing that it works.
That it exists. It exists, and it's so fairly publicly known. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the fact that the city kind of supports it, that's amazing. That doesn't really exist in many other places, certainly not in London. And
I think I feel like there's I think people are starting to try to, or have tried, or are trying to introduce a bit more of that attitude. I don't think it'll ever get to that stage over here because you know British people are prudes and are known for being reserved, and you know, albeit there's obviously different cultures and different, I don't know, fetishes and tastes and things that operate within the country. But I think something on that scale in the UK, I don't know, the government have something to say about it before it kind of got to a certain level. But
too many Tories.
Yeah, exactly. There's a club called Fold that's got a 24-hour license. That's a 400 capacity venue.
Cool.
That's just recently opened. That's trying to operate that sort of come in and go in policy. So it's 24 hours from Friday. Well, it's 24 hours. I mean, it opens Friday, closes I think Sunday night.
Okay, cool. I do want to go there. Friends of mine are playing there soon, actually. Yeah,
so similar sort of space. I might be trying to do something there later on towards the end of the year. But yeah, it's kind of interesting to sort of, because obviously the whole 24-hour policy in London supposedly got 24-hour licenses were like in the news, like, I don't know, maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. But like, since moving to London, haven't been here 10 years, like, I'm really like seen anywhere actually open for that.
Right.
I'm at, like, kind of see it through. So it almost felt like a bit of a myth.
Right.
That it actually happened. So it'd be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, there's lots of clubs have closed in London, and it's just sort of ever-changing landscape.
Yeah. But yeah, the landscape is changing in Berlin too. I was basically the motivation to come to London was because my partner had work opportunities here. So London was basically the city then where we both had, where our lives could both be viable, kind of thing.
Nice.
And it's been actually super nice to come here, and like, as much as I kind of felt like Berlin was my musical home, and as much as I've got like really good friends there that I kind of dearly miss now. It's also been really wonderful to kind of remember that my music practice has kind of got roots here since my first releases were through London labels, yours and Liminal Sounds. And I've just been finding people to be like in the music community, especially to be like really kind of like open and welcoming. And yeah, it's been exciting to sort of like slowly get some things off the ground and be exploring different facets of my music process that I haven't done before and maybe wasn't so possible back in Berlin or in Australia.
Well, it's definitely good to have you here, because I remember some of the early meetings that we had on like Tottenham Court Road, and you're on about potentially moving here and this, that and the other, which obviously a few years ago now. It's kind of like good to kind of see all that like actually unfold and kind of come to fruition.
Sure. I mean, I can't even keep up with like how many times I've moved over the last like 3 years. And yeah, like I keep telling people like I'm living here, and they're like, but how long for exactly? You're not going to stick around, are you? But I'm like, no, I am. Yeah, I'm determined to stick around for a couple of years at least.
Nice. So then I think just before we probably sign off, I know I put out on Twitter earlier that I was interviewing you this morning, and if anyone had any questions. So Bossman Farhan Yassin, aka Muslim Priest, he wanted to know, and this was referencing your old Twitter name, which was Rigid and Elastic. He says almost all of your music and Decisions releases have this feel to it, that plus a lot of textures. Was it a conscious decision to sign artists with this sound in particular? I've always loved your work, Ollie.
Shout out Farhan. Love you, mate. I've got to visit you in Kuala Lumpur again soon. Yeah, that's a good question. I think those things are pretty adequate descriptions of my own music. I'd forgotten that I'd used that as a Twitter handle.
He was watching.
Right. And yeah, I guess then that extending to the artists on the label too. But it's probably more of a subconscious decision, to be honest, because I guess that's just my taste, you know? So intuitively, I'm kind of drawn to those sensibilities. But yeah, maybe that kind of echoes what I said a bit earlier, that like the common thread for me in terms of kind of like inspiration and influence, and also my taste as a producer and a DJ, is more about sensibilities like that than it is about genre or tempo or... Yeah,
it's the way it's been either played or the way the music has been produced. And like you said, rather than it being about, a BPM or a category.
Sure, yeah. So something can be rigid and elastic at 160 BPM and be from that corner of the world and like totally sick. And then something can kind of be like that at 128 from somewhere totally different. But yeah, both of those things kind of resonate with me, even though they might be from quite different, disciplines or contexts.
And the other question, which I think I'm gonna probably steal this and ask to everyone on the podcast, because I think it's great. Who is your Britney Spears? So this was asked by Saturn Rising.
Yes.
I don't know who that is, but big up either way.
I know who that is.
Cool. So who's your Britney Spears / who or what inspires you the most?
Right. Well, Britney Spears for me is too singular to really like give somebody else that role in a way. But I wanted to say, if it's like an inspiring vocalist who I would one day like to work with, then it's you, Saturn.
Ooh, there you go. There you go.
And then who is my most inspiring? I was kind of thinking about that because I saw it on Twitter earlier too. It's a good question, because I think, again, it's less like a specific person or genre or artist or something. I mean, of course, I'm influenced by a bunch of really amazing artists, but I think, if I sort of think about the common thread, then there is this kind of like fearlessness and conviction and often, this kind of like originality or people bringing something kind of like oblique and fresh to the table. And I'm also just like super inspired by people that do that with like humility and grace and yeah, kind of like singularity, you know, like people that do that really kind of in their own
way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think those are the people that I'm most inspired by. And that's of course artists, but then that's also like other people in my life, friends and family and stuff as well.
Nice. So then, yeah, just before we finally sign off then, have you got anyone else that you want to shout out or big up, or any parting words of wisdom or humor or other?
I mean, there's bajillions of people that I want to shout out, but I hesitate to start naming names because then I'm inevitably going to miss people out. But yeah, like lots of love to the people around me and orbiting around decisions, and that I've been working with here in London or in the UK in different capacities, and over in Europe and everywhere else in the world. Love you all. Thank you so much.
Cool, man. Well, look, thanks very much for taking the time to come and chat. I think it's important, and yeah, hopefully this will just be like a continuation of us kind of working together in some way. And
sounds good.
Hopefully, yeah, there'll be some other things that we can announce to people in the future.
For sure.
Cool.
Thanks, Matt,
for
all you do.
Thank you. See you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.